Hey, hello everybody, and welcome to the third installment of Dishin with Ditty. You think after three times I'd get that? It's opposite. Dishin with Ditty. Welcome everybody. We are so excited. Well, I'm the only one here right now. I am so excited to have these two amazing people on the show this week. They are, wow, it seems like 42nd friends because the time goes by like that. But basically, 40 years I've been friends with these guys, and started out my career as a musical director with Rick Grossman, who is a brilliant actor, director, and producer. As a matter of fact, he was directing the show one of the first shows that I ever musical directed, and gave me my start in doing musical direction, and what an amazing time that was. And believe it or not, in that same show, which we'll talk about later, the second guest is Tony Spinosa, who is also an amazing director and producer, former actor, and author, who was in that production, and that is why this happened. And this is a long time in coming, 40 years later. But what a joy it is to have them both appearing on the show. Thank you so much for tuning into it. And please tell your friends. You can follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, all those new things that I'm just learning about now. So, without further ado, I want to bring Rick on. Rick has had such an amazing journey. So let's, without any further hesitation, bring on Mr. Rick Grossman. There he is.
Hello.
Hi, Rick. How you doing?
Fine. Thank you for the introduction. It makes me feel like I did Joseph and the Dreamcoat with the original Joseph in Egypt. Yeah,
exactly. Well, you know what? It doesn't feel like that though. It feels like it was a blink away.
Yeah.
It's unreal. And 40 years ago, when I was first getting started, I had done a couple of shows, but just getting started, and being able to work with you at that moment was so wonderful. And then of course the many things we've done after that as well. But you started at the ripe old age of 6, am I right?
That's as far as what I can remember. They told me when I at the moment that I was born and the light hit me, I did 4 choruses of "Rockabye Ya Baby" with a Dixie melody. So.
That's great. And you worked with your family in Yiddish theater. Is that where it started?
Yeah, it started. It went back to my grandparents, and both my grandparents were actors, producers, directors, and who basically the Yiddish theater in New York was so clogged down that they felt at that time, as the immigration process was starting, that Jews were going all over North America. And my grandfather's concept was that they would want to see theater. They would want to see Yiddish theater. So He took places to Yiddish theater all over the country, out to the West Coast, Los Angeles, San Francisco, even into Canada.
Wow.
In places like, in British Columbia and Alberta. And he basically found where there was an audience for Jewish theater, and then eventually really settled in Chicago and established a theater there for many years.
Right. Was the productions, it was referred to as Yiddish theater because all the productions were performed in Yiddish, correct?
Right. Yes, they were performed. Yeah.
Yeah. And what were the in Manhattan when you were doing it? What were the production values like? Were they the true Jewish Broadway? I mean,
Yes.
was
Second
that's
Avenue was the Jewish Broadway. And at one time there were 10 Yiddish theaters on Second Avenue from starting at Houston Street up to 14th Street, where all the greats played. And
right,
they were, the first theater stage that I stepped on when I was 6, 7 years old was the
right.
Second Avenue Theater, which had about 1,600 seats. And,
Wow.
what I remember, and people ask me to this day, sometimes when, a body mic goes out, how come we can hear you? Well, I was 6 years old, and I remember being out on that stage and my father saying, and they didn't use microphones.
Right,
They didn't use
right,
microphones.
right.
And we had 12 pieces playing in the pit. And my father said, you got to make sure that the last person sitting in the last seat in the last row can hear you.
Yep.
And that's how we were trained. But yeah, that was the mecca of theater there with all the great stars.
Right, right. How did they do as commercial productions as they had on Broadway, or was it more?
There were different theaters that catered to different niche audiences.
Okay.
As an example, you had the very serious the Yiddish Art Theater, and it's found of Maurice Schwartz, who was the original Tevye on stage and on film.
Wow.
He was very, very prestigious. Then you had the more flamboyant productions that were done by somebody like Boris Tomaszewski, who was the most very, very famous actor, director, and also for those younger people, was the grandfather of the great conductor Michael Tilson Thomas. And he did very flamboyant. Then there was basically like the Shakespearean type of theaters that were like an actor like David Kessler, who really dominated that stage. And then you had the more popular musical comedy like we have. And from those ranks, that's where my parents really cut their teeth. And you had big stars emerge, such as Molly Picon and Menashe Skolnick. And they were, and you had young people at that time who were getting their training there, like Jerry Rabinowitz, who became Jerome Robbins, and Walter Matthau, who couldn't even get on the stage. He was what they used to call a candy butcher. He used to walk up and down the aisles of the theaters on Second Avenue selling candy.
Oh my God!
But yeah, many that was the difference, and really, and then they would go out into the hinterlands with theater in Brooklyn and the Bronx, and
crazy.
And they would sometimes have repertory theaters there too, where they would do different shows.
So amazing. And around that same time, were your parents still also doing Borscht Belt work as well? Was it back and forth?
Well, the Yiddish theater had what they called the season. And the season would usually start right around the Jewish holidays, September, October, and it would usually run until towards the end of January, February. So then the Yiddish actors, many of them would go out on the road. They would take their shows to Montreal, and then it became very popular to start taking your shows down to Miami Beach because that's where their people were.
Right.
And then that would kind of, that would fall off in the spring. There'd be a lull for a while, and then come right after Memorial Day, July 4th, everybody headed up to the mountains, to the Catskills, and my parents had a nightclub act, which they threw me into, and that's how I cut my teeth on performing. And it was not on a Saturday night. The acts, the performers, they would do 2-3 shows at different hotels, at bungalow colonies. They'd run from one to the other and hope that they didn't get a flat tire while on the way. So that was there was definitely that connection between the Yiddish theater, and many of the Yiddish theater performers also worked in the hotels. They were tumblers,
right?
What they called
them.
Yeah, and a lot of the people then that came into television, like the Neil Simons and the Mel Brookses, and even Jerry Lewis, really cut their teeth on being tumblers up there.
Yeah. Were there really big hotels around at that time, or was that before the Concord and the Kutchers and all
Well,
those?
the Concord, places like the Concord and Grossingers, these hotels went back actually to the 1920s. They
Oh,
were
okay.
small, they were smaller, and
Yeah.
then they started to expand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because people would want certain things.
Sure.
The guests, a woman would call up the front desk and she'd say, "I'm just calling to find out how much golf you got there." And the guy would say, "Oh, we got 36 holes of golf." "Well, how often do you play, madam?"
Right.
"No, no, no, I never play golf." "Well, by the way, you've got the big pool you can do laps in." "Oh, of
Right.
course, madam. Why? Do you like to do a lot of laps?" "No, no, no, I don't swim." "What about the tennis courts? You've got 12 tennis courts. How do you like to play?" "No, I don't play tennis." "Madam, why are you asking me these questions?" "I just want to make sure you got it in case I need it."
Yes.
I
Yes.
performed in the Porsche belt, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And then later on, when you were in your mid-teens, early teens, you wound up starting to study serious acting, correct?
Yeah, I was fortunate, through the family, through the theater, and one name that I did not mention from the Yiddish theater, who was really one of the greats, was Jacob P. Adler.
Uh-huh.
And the Adler family, his children, his two most famous children, were Luther Adler, the great actor, and Stella Adler. And Stella went back with my dad's family for many, many years.
Uh-huh.
She saw me perform in a show, I forget which one.
Right.
And she said to my father after that, she says, "The boy has talent, but no discipline." So she says, "I will take him under my wing and I will teach him." And then at the age of, I don't know, between I was 13, 14, the next
Right.
thing I know, I'm taking classes with Stella Adler and
Wow.
her staff, who had taught people like Marlon Brando and Robert
Yep.
Duvall. And she was just a fabulous lady. Every time I walk out, and the things that I learned from her are with me to this day. Every time
Yeah.
I walk out on the stage, I remember things that she said to me
Right.
about making it real, make it the first time, be in the moment. So I studied with her, and her style of teaching, which was a little bit different than Lee
Right.
Strasberg or Sandy Meisner.
Right.
But yeah, I was so fortunate to
Yeah.
have that, and then she prepared me to help me get into the High School of Performing Arts in New York. So it became then really studying about acting and
Yeah.
being an actor, and kind of myself viewing myself as in musical
Right.
theater, which I do a lot of, an actor who sings. I don't consider
Yeah.
myself a singer.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Now, was your family living in Manhattan at the time, or were you on
Yeah.
Long Island?
No. I lived in Manhattan till I went away to college. For a spell, I was at the Pasadena Playhouse in California,
Uh-huh.
and I came to Long Island to go to Hofstra, and
Right.
that's how I kind of started to. And then some years later, getting married and buying a
Yeah.
house out on Long Island and
Right.
settling in, and then life took its
Yeah.
turns.
Sure. Sure. Now, one of the things that I remember so well is us performing at Eisenhower Park, and one of the things that we did was Damn Yankees.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yep.
And there it is. There's the logo. And at the time, you played the devil, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
Mr. Applegate.
Yes. So I had to ask, because it was so sentimental to me. I asked Rick if he would mind doing a song from the show. He didn't do one of the devil songs, but has graciously agreed to do a little portion of "You Gotta Have Heart," and I am going to try and do this so that I don't screw it up. I can do this. Okay, so here is a little bit of Rick Grossman doing "You Gotta Have Heart."
You gotta have heart. All you really need is heart. When the odds are saying you'll never win, that's when the grin should start. You've gotta have hope, mustn't sit around and moan. Nothing's half as bad as it may appear. Wait till next year and hope. When your luck is batting zero, get your chin up off the floor. Mister, you can be a hero. You can open any door. There's nothing to it but to do it. You gotta have heart. Miles and miles and miles of heart. Oh, it's fine to be a genius, of course, but keep that old horse before the cart. First you gotta have heart. You gotta have heart. You gotta have heart. Stay safe.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. That was great and brought back such great memories as well.
It's also, I feel, such a song of relevance to the times we're living in now, that we need to find our hearts, find our compassion as a nation, as a humanity, for what we've been going through in these last 90 days, in this last week. We need to show that we are a people with respect, with heart, with love. And like, Richard Adler and Jerry Ross said, just please have heart.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Rick. Thank you. That's absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect. And we do have a mutual friend who has a comment. And I'm going to put it up here on the screen so you can see. Miss Roxy York says, "You're a singer, Rick."
I love you, Roxy.
Yes. And I agree with her. You are. So Rick, after Pasadena Playhouse and you got your training and you went to Hofstra and all of that, you started your career and you've had an absolutely amazing career. 9 off-Broadway shows, 7 national tours, 3 of which between 2014 and 2018, which is incredible. How do you get there? How did you, I know it's probably a 2-hour question, but
there was a time before, when we first came to Long Island, for 7 years, I didn't do any theater. I just walked away from it totally. I had different priorities in my life.
Sure.
And, a friend of mine was I didn't know anything about community theater.
Right.
I just knew the professional world. But a friend of mine's brother was in a production at a community theater called the Sayville Musical Workshop.
Right.
And I went down to see the show, and then said, "Well, you do theater. Why don't you, come down?" And I said, "Well, what's the next show they're doing?" He said, "Well, they're going to be doing Man of La Mancha." I said, "Oh, really? That's kind of interesting. I've got some ties there." And so I went down, I auditioned, booked it, and started getting involved in Long Island theater. And that kind of snowballed. And I had been trained at Hofstra for direction, to be a director, and I actually had directed some things before that, but that's where I really cut my teeth on directing. So I started directing and performing, and went through a long career for the most part in Long Island theater, and was attached to a few theaters very closely, and then about 10 years ago or so, I decided it was time to say goodbye to the business world, that I had been very fortunate and very lucky, blessed of the things that I had accomplished there. And, sat down with my wife at the time, with my wife, and should we, roll the dice, so to speak.
Yeah.
And people said, hey, give it a shot. And I did. And things started to happen. A lot of it, my mother, who was in this business since she was a child. She was a child actress in the Yiddish theater. And, she always told me, she spent her whole life working as a professional actress, and said, a lot of it is timing, but make sure you're prepared when the time comes.
Right.
And,
Right.
luckily my time came much later than I thought. But
Yeah.
I guess, and it took me a while to get back and really sharpen my skills.
Sure.
When I started getting on the Long Island Railroad and going into the auditions in the city, it
Yeah.
was a whole different story. And I really had to relearn a lot of things.
Sure.
And you're
Because
constantly relearning.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's amazing that it happened in such a big way for you over in the second half of your career in it, which is so wonderful and a testament to your talent. Besides, so you mentioned before you have a very rich and long history with the show Man of La Mancha. As a matter of fact, I think you might know somebody pretty well that was in the original production. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, going back to the Yiddish theater and the families and my father's family in Chicago, and that became a blended family with the Jacobson family in Chicago, and they had a lot of the Jacobsons were multi-talented, but my uncle Irving Jacobson really was in the Yiddish theater, all his life, and then finally got a break in the early '60s, getting a plum role in the play Enter Laughing on Broadway. And then 2 years after that, things started to happen, and lo and behold, he was cast in a workshop production at the Goodspeed Opera House of a new musical called Man of La Mancha, and to play the role of Sancho Panza and originate it. And they did it there, and then brought it to the Anthony Washington Square Theater, and it became the historical piece of musical theater that it was. And I watched him play the role many, many times. Right. And then, as I said, when I came back to theater on Long Island, it was with Man of La Mancha. And I kind of started my segue of playing Sancho Panza. And I have now been doing that role. Well, I know I was fortunate to have done it just last year with the Hampton Theater Company, and your wife Diane was a part of the pit.
Yeah.
And what was so crazy is, a lot of people, Amy McGrath, who musical directed that show, had been the Aldonza in my Sable Musical Workshop, or even had the same drummer, Kevin Quigg. It was just, but and I've done I did a national tour of it. I've done and directed it as well, all over the place.
Yeah.
And I've been so to be able to have, links with people who were a part of that original production. My uncle is gone for many, many years, but I still channel him every time I walk out and put on that costume.
It was such a joy to see you do it again. When I got to see you out east doing it, such a great production, such a wonderful production. I tell you, you have. I think there's a couple of roles that you have such a strong and sturdy history with. Another one is Tevye in Fiddler.
Yeah.
How many times have you done that one?
I've done the production. I've done 8 productions of Fiddler. I've directed it. I've played Tevye 4 times now. And and before that, I had to grow into it. I started out as Laser Wolf.
Okay.
Who's actually supposed to be older than Tevye.
Right.
But I finally, I had the chance to play Tevye, and I've been doing that also for, I don't know, some 30 years, it seems.
Right.
It's such a special role because, again, my ties to it, as I said, Maurice Schwartz was the original Tevye.
Right.
My mother played in his company and played in Tevye the Dairyman, the show on
Uh-huh.
the late play,
Yep.
played Chava. And finally, a couple of years ago, I got my hands on the film version
Yes.
that Maurice Schwartz is in,
Right.
and my aunt Helen Grossman is in that film playing the mother of Fietka.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Oh,
so there were
wow.
all those ties, and of course the whole feeling of the Yiddishkeit to it
Yes.
made the show and made the character so endearing to me.
That's great. Well, Rick was so nice to contribute a song from Fiddler on the Roof, and Tevye's big number, If I Were a Rich Man. So without further ado, I'm gonna try to get this going.
Tradition.
Yes, here we go. Oh, see, I can do this. I'm not going to be defeated. I have this under control. Let's see. I do this. Share screen. Here we
So
go.
3 Russians walk into a bar in Anapetka.
Okay.
There we go.
You met many, many poor people. I realize, of course, it's no shame to be poor, but it's no great honor either. So what would have been so terrible if I had a small fortune? If I were a rich man, all day long I'd bitty bum. If I were a wealthy man, I wouldn't have to work hard. If I were a bitty rich, diddle man, I'd build a big tall house with rooms by the dozen right in the middle of the town. A fine tin roof with real wooden floors below. There would be one long staircase just going up, and one even longer coming down, and one more leading nowhere just for show. I'd fill my yard with chicks and turkeys and geese and ducks for the town to see and hear, squawking just as noisily as they can. And each loud would land like a trumpet on the ear, as if to say, here lives a wealthy man. If I were a rich man, all day long I'd bitty bum. If I were a wealthy man, I wouldn't have to work hard. If I were a bitty rich, diddle man, I see my wife, my Golda, looking like a rich man's wife with a proper double chin, supervising meals to heart's delight. I see her putting on airs and strutting like a peacock. Oh, what a happy mood she's in, screaming at the servants day and night. The most important men in town would come to fawn on me. They would ask me to advise them, like a Solomon the wise. If you please, Reptevia, pardon me, Reptevia, posing problems that would cross a rabbi's eyes. And it won't make one bit of difference if I answer right or wrong. When you're rich, they think you really know. I discuss the holy book with the learned men 7 hours every day. That would be the sweetest thing of all. If I were a rich man, all day long I'd biddy bum. If I were a wealthy man, I wouldn't have to work hard. Lord, who made the lion and the lamb, you decreed I should be what I am. Would it spoil some vast eternal plan if I were a wealthy man?
Great, Rick.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Just as I remembered it. Thank you so much, Rick. We're gonna move on to Tony, but then we're gonna have you come back so we can all chat a little bit.
Looking forward to it.
Okay, thanks so much, Rick. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, my good friend Tony Spinosa, who has a brand new show coming out hopefully in February, I believe. We're going to talk to him about it, called Singing Revolution. We're going to talk all about it in a little while, but without further ado, here is Mr. Tony Spinosa. Hey, Tony.
Hey, Jeff.
How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on today.
Are you kidding? Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Man, it's been such a long time. It really has. And to think that I think the first time we worked together was in Seesaw, right?
I think it was in Comac, and Rick Grossman was the director. You were the musical director.
Yes.
Amy McGrath was the lead, from what I remember.
That's right. That's right. Well, I have a little surprise for you. Here is. Look at that. Amy just sent that to me today. It's just so incredible.
Wow.
It's what a time that was. What a time that was.
Yeah.
And then after that, I think we might have done a few in the park shows and things. But then when we really had gotten together was during a review that we put together.
Right.
Tony's Tonight.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was an absolute joy. That was an absolute joy. So Tony's Tonight led into Bright Lights of Broadway, and then soon after that was when I really hadn't spoken to you after that. But what a career you have had! Absolutely unbelievable. Tell us your path. Tell us about your path.
It's interesting because I started to draw out the timeline, and I'm very lucky to have had such a wonderful career, sort of working my way up the ladder in the musical theater. And it started with Long Island Theater, doing Broad Hollow shows and Gray Wig shows and doing Seesaw and Comac. And that was sort of my starting ground. I went to Villanova University for 1 year studying liberal arts. And at the end of that year, I said to my parents, college really isn't the right thing for me. I really want to go to New York City and study acting, singing, and dancing and pursue what I love. Well, they were a bit up in arms about it. And they said, oh, what do we do? I know. Let's call Father Al Stevenson at the Actors Chapel on 46th Street in Manhattan and see if he can talk some sense into Tony. Well, Al took the call. Father Al took the call, and he said, well, let me see. There's this new guy on Broadway with a hit show, a chorus line. It's Michael Bennett. Let me give Michael Bennett a call and see if he'll have lunch with me and Tony and talk about showbiz. Well, that's exactly what happened.
Oh, my God.
Me, Father Al, and Michael Bennett sat down for lunch. I was supposed to go down and start a contract with the Busch, Busch Gardens.
Yes.
In Virginia. I was supposed to host the Italian show that year.
Okay.
He was like, just call them, tell them you're not coming. I'm going to take you around to the dance teachers in New York and show you how to study, and then come back and audition for me in a year or two once you've actually studied.
Wow.
And that sort of set me off with really wonderful training in New York.
Sure.
Unfortunately, Michael passed away before I was able to audition for him for chorus line. But I did end up doing a lot of chorus line about 20 years later, once I moved to California.
Right.
So, so after studying in New York, I decided to move to Los Angeles to pursue musical theater there because it seemed like a better market, not as competitive a market for musical theater.
Right.
Of course,
Right.
LA is more about TV and film, but there was a theater market.
Yeah.
So I was able to do shows. I was immediately cast in Fame, the musical, which was the U.S. premiere in Los Angeles. Went on to do Iv'e, many productions of A Chorus Line, and South Pacific, Leader of the Pack with Sha Na Na.
Wow.
And then I was in a production of Sweet Charity in Santa Barbara, California, with Patty Colombo playing Charity. And she was also rehearsing Peter Pan, which was a scheduled national tour that was headed for Broadway.
Right.
And toward the very end of the run of Sweet Charity, she came up to me and said, "Tony, we are losing our Italian pirate. Do you have any desire to go on a national tour that's headed to Broadway?"
No kidding.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about being at the right place at the right time. I mean, that is literally what happened. And the next day they hired me to go on the national tour, and that gave me my Broadway debut.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing. So today I find out a former student of mine was in the tour with you, played, what did he play? I wrote it down. John, one of the little boys, Mike LaVolpe, who,
oh my gosh,
yeah, who saw one of the things that I had on Instagram about the show today, and he wrote to me. He said, "Tony Spinosa, wait a minute, I know Tony Spinosa."
Yeah, we were on tour for 3 years, 2.5 years together.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Such a good kid. Such a good kid. Look at that. He's no kid anymore. So then you went to Broadway with Peter Pan.
Correct. And that's basically what brought me back to New York City.
Okay.
And I did a subsequent tour of Peter Pan a couple of years later. So I did about 5 years of Peter Pan in total.
Right.
Interspersed with other shows, a lot of chorus lines, a lot of South Pacific. And I even did a South Pacific at the Hollywood Bowl with Reba McEntire and Brian Stokes Mitchell, which I think you got a photo of later.
Yes. Yeah.
So things like that crossed my path while I was in LA. But coming back to New York, I decided to really dive into my directing career. And that's when things started to materialize, sort of working my way up the ladder, so to speak. Where I started to do a lot of events for Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS. A lot of their Easter Bonnet competition and Gypsy of the Year competitions. I directed several solo strips for Jerry Mitchell. There was a precursor events to the Big Broadway Bears that happens each year. And then what happened? I was directing for Village Light Opera. And this opportunity came up with the Stage Directors and Choreographers Union. It's called the Observership Program. Where they bring in one young director or less experienced director to shadow a Broadway director on putting on a Broadway show and to literally watch how that's done. Just be a fly on the wall. And I had seen this production of La Cage aux Folles in London 2 years prior, and an email blast went out saying Terry Johnson is looking for an observer for La Cage, starring Douglas Hodge and Kelsey Grammer. And I was very familiar with the production. So I wrote him a really lovely letter about how moved I was by this version of La Cage, because it's a much more scaled down version than the regular La Cage. And how powerful I thought the piece became because of his direction. I was called in for an interview, and he hired me on the spot for the observership program. And then on the night before we opened, he sat me down and said, the London creative team has decided that he wanted me to take care of the show because he was heading back to London after opening night, and they needed a resident director. So they hired me for resident director for the Broadway run, which was amazing. And during that time, my little piece of Broadway history that I'd love to be connected with is that Harvey Fierstein took over the role of Zaza, which Douglas Hodge won the Tony for. So 1 year in, Harvey Fierstein took over, and Harvey wrote the show 25 years not even thinking he was going to be playing the role in his older years. And I actually got to put Harvey into his own show for the remainder of the run on Broadway.
Oh my God, that is incredible. That is incredible. So as a resident director,
yes,
what are the responsibilities? Like, are you there every night watching and giving notes and
basically, it's a position that was created in London. Because in West End theater, the stage manager takes care of the stage stuff. The resident director takes care of the actors. It's very divided there. Most times on a Broadway show, the production stage manager is in charge of the actors and running, put in rehearsals and you know, tweaking the show at times. But in this case, Terry really wanted a separate eye on the show that could really pay attention to it and keep its integrity.
Right. That's really amazing. That's really amazing. And then so you're with the show the entire time through.
Yeah. Right.
And then were there any subsequent productions afterwards that, you know, tours?
The national tour went out, and of course they like to save money on national tours. So when the production company, who will remain nameless, put the production together, they're like, "No, sorry, Tony, there's no job for you here." Well, it went out starring George Hamilton and Christopher Sieber, both of whom I adore. And the first few cities were a little bit rough. And I got a call. I was actually on the morning of my birthday, in December, and saying, "Tony, we need you to go out to St. Louis tomorrow and fix the show."
Wow.
So at that point, I had never met George before. I had worked with Christopher, but never George. And I was scheduled to stay in St. Louis for 24 hours to work with George and Chris. And George Hamilton brought me into his dressing room and said, "You have too much information that I need. You're staying here for the rest of the week."
Wow.
Which was actually what happened, and started a very wonderful friendship with me and George.
That's incredible. And kudos to him for, having the nerve to say that to you and you know, to help himself. Sure. That's amazing. That's amazing. So there was two things that I read, and I wasn't quite sure what they were. I wrote them down because I knew I was going to forget. Explain to me, because I don't know, what is the Cringe Fest, and there was another and Bad Music Fests.
Okay, this is a very off Broadway organization. New York Artists Unlimited, I believe, hosted those festivals, both of them. And it was one of my first off Broadway directing gigs in New York. And the Bad Musicals Festival, I directed Charlie Chang and the Mysterious Salami, and I actually won the award for Best Production.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
Funny. And the Cringe Fest that followed the next year, I directed Is That a Spear in Your Pocket, which was a combination of skits, and I won the direction award again for that year.
Oh, that's so funny.
And I got mentioned by Liz Smith in her column on Page 6 and things like that. So it really started to ignite my directing career in New York.
That's really, really amazing. That's really amazing. So now fast forward all this time, and tell us a little bit about Singing Revolution, because in Singing Revolution, you've written it, you're going to direct it.
Correct.
And you're producing this and putting this whole thing together. And I personally just think it's one of the most amazing things I've ever heard about, because the whole process of it is so current and so about today, timely. Yes. Tell us a little bit how that came about.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've created things throughout my entire career, starting with Tony Tonight, and I've done adaptations of musicals. I've done jukebox musicals, but I was really looking for an original story to tell. I love original stories, especially stories that are humanitarian, like Come From Away. And I happened to be on a vacation in the Baltic states, and I landed in Tallinn, Estonia, which was a country and a city that I had actually never heard of. I found out through touring the city that they went through this singing revolution. It's a coined phrase, singing revolution, in 1991.
Right.
which was within my lifetime. And no one that I talk to about it here in the United States even knows what Estonia is. They always say Astoria. No, the country, the Republic of Estonia in the Baltics.
Yeah.
And the story fascinated me because as a culture, the Estonians sing. They actually teach kids to sing starting in the first grade. They teach them how to sight read, whether they can hold a tune or not. They teach everyone in the country to sing. They collectively come together in big stadiums to sing together as a culture. That's part of it. Right. And starting in 1987, they started this singing revolution because they were under the Soviet Union for 50 years illegally. Right. And they were finally in 1987 given freedom of speech by Gorbachev. Mm-hmm. And they took that as their key to open up the door to start singing about Estonian freedom and getting Estonians back. I mean, events that we didn't hear about in the States, one of them specifically, the Baltic chain, was a chain of 2 million people that spanned 400 miles, linking arms from the capital of Tallinn to the capital of Latvia, Riga, down to the capital of Lithuania, Vilnius, singing in protest of this illegal pact that kept them tied to the Soviet Union.
Oh my God.
Estonia did several of these big events that led them to ended up leading them to their freedom, their independence as a country without one drop of bloodshed. It was all peaceful protests, tanks coming at them, and they would just stand there without any weapons, without any bats in their hands, without even any signs, just in solidarity, holding each other, singing toward tanks coming with them in protest, and they got their independence. This story fascinated me, and I said, this is a musical waiting to happen.
Incredible.
Over the past 5 years, I have met a lot of the people that are still alive that led the revolution. The Estonian government set up me having interviews with them in Tallinn, and I was able to speak to them about how did you do this prior to the internet, prior to cell phones? How did you assemble an event this large? And they explained how they went to book clubs and churches and handed out flyers, and they were so passionate about doing it, and so passionate about doing it with integrity, without violence, by singing. And this really captured my heart, and I thought this is a beautiful story to tell. Stories about revolution are often very popular, and that this was a singing revolution really, really, it just inspired me to a massive end. And I've written this musical now called Singing Revolution that we're hoping to have the debut in Los Angeles in February 2021. That's what we're gearing up for.
Wow. And so you wrote the music and the lyrics and the book as well?
Yeah. So I have a co-writer with the book, James Bearhart. He was wonderful because my first draft of the musical was coming out like a history lesson.
Okay.
And James helped me to rip it apart and turn it into a character-driven piece where you're really rooting for the hero.
Right.
And he's an amazing writer, and I am so glad that he walked into my life during a playwriting class. And and he approached me and said, "If you ever need help writing this thing, call on me." And a year later, I did.
Wow.
I did write the music and the lyrics. James co-wrote the lyrics, and the concept was obviously mine. But I'm very proud of where we've gotten it to.
And was it 5 years, did you say?
That was 5 years ago in July. Yeah.
Wow.
And it takes not that long to write a full musical from scratch. You know that.
Yeah, and here you are 5 years later, just waiting to and had it been done earlier, I don't think it would have been as timely.
Well, Jeff, that's what's really sort of mind-boggling right now, how resonant, how relevant the musical that I've written is today. It is so much about peaceful protest.
Right.
We will get nowhere with violence. We will get nowhere with violence. And that's where this internal war that we're having right now in our country has to come to an end. And we need to find a way to reunite our country again.
Yeah.
And I hope that message can come forth with Sing Revolution when we can get it on the stage again, which, the COVID thing has put a little bit of a concern into the equation.
Right.
But I'm a positive thinker, and I'm hoping we're going to be clear by February 2021.
Yep.
I'm still heading for that date.
Yeah, that's great because, and you know what? If it's not that date, it's going to be soon after that because the story has to be told, and just an amazing story.
Yeah,
just an amazing story. Well, Tony, you were so generous to send me a clip of Why don't you explain the clip and then I'll get it ready to show.
Great. So the clip you're going to see was filmed by Neil Haskell. Neil was a So You Think You Can Dance winner. He was also in Hamilton. He started to Bring It On Broadway.
Right.
He was in The Times Are A-Changin'. He's an amazing talent. And this is Neil Haskell singing Lift It Up, which is the opening number of Sing Revolution. And to set it up, the city of town, the very first night they were given freedom of speech, they started a spontaneous night song festival. Now, Estonia is only 1 million people. That's all there is in the whole country. Right. And on this one night, 300,000 people came to sing together.
Wow.
And that's what this song represents, the country coming together to lift it up in song.
Amazing.
So this is Neil Haskell singing Lift It Up from Singing Revolution, the musical.
Okay.
To break, there's no time to hesitate. Now's the time to liberate. Now's the time. Lift it up. We can sing our country free. Lift it up. We will show them all we can be. Lift it up and cut through all of the red of our past regrets and rise. Inside, there's a dormant song. Though it gets drowned out, it is never gone. In every man and in every child, our independence carry for miles. Round the world it keeps ringing on. It's in our blood and in our veins. Hear the message that we say. We won't run, we won't wait. Keep the anthem ever is. See the walls start to break. There's no time to hesitate. Now's the time to liberate. Now's the time. Lift it up, we can sing our country free. Lift it up, we will show them all we can be. Lift it up and cut through all of the red of our past regrets and rise. Lift it up, let us sing a new history and sing our country free. It's time to call for declaration. After all, we are the new nation. I'm patiently waiting for our time to make it. The point is we made it. From the shore of the Baltic Sea, with the long summer nights a week, celebration in our history, finding energy out of the deep. So lift it up, sing it. So bring it on, We're never gonna stop singing. We're never gonna stop, never gonna stop singing. So bring it on, We're never gonna stop singing. So lift it up, never gonna stop, lift it up.
so amazing, so amazing.
Thank you.
The music is so inspiring, as the lyrics are as well. But you can't. It's so hard not to move when when the music is playing. It's great, Tony. Really terrific.
I chose a Europop style score for this show because I really believe we need to inspire younger audiences to appreciate musical theater, just as they're appreciating something like Hamilton and Dear Evan Hansen. And I felt going more toward a contemporary sound was really going to benefit us moving forward into the future of musical theater.
Yeah,
that was a conscious choice.
Absolutely. So, just so terrific, so terrific.
Thank you.
We're really looking forward to it coming to New York. And you'll have to keep me posted in LA what's going on with it, because
absolutely.
we're gonna push it out on this side.
Yeah. Great, fantastic.
Yeah. Awesome. So you know what? I'm going to bring Rick back on, and we can have a little conversation with him. There he is.
Hey,
so it's been quite a few years since you guys have seen each other, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We ran into each other about, it was like 10, 11 years ago. It seems like it was only 2 years ago. But, we got together for something in the city and had a chance to catch up, and mentioned your name several times, Jeff.
Right.
So since we're all together, I thought it would be fun to play this little game that we've been doing each week with the show, and that's called Tell Me a Story. And it makes me laugh every time. And in Tell Me a Story, we have pictures that each of you have sent to me. And where is it here? Did I not? Oh, look at that. I didn't do it. I'm going to have to do it now. Okay. So in these pictures that you have sent, each one of you is going to claim the picture and then just tell us a little story about each of the pictures. Okay, so I'm just waiting for it to load up here. Okay, and we're gonna do this. Here we go, and we're gonna do present, and here's Tell Me a Story. Okay, so first picture.
Well, there I am with my beloved Uncle Sancho Irving Jacobson. This was the first performance, the first time I performed the role of Sancho. And I had gotten the part, and I called him up. I was so excited. I said, I'm going to play Sancho. I'm going to play Sancho. He says, oh, yeah, I know that guy. Where are you doing this show? And I told him, Sayville, Long Island. He says, okay, what's the date? He says, I'll be there. And sure enough, opening night, he was there in the audience. And every time we went into one of the musical numbers, my wife, Marcia, was sitting next to him. He started to sing along with every song. And she had Uncle Irving just singing on the stage,
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah. But I was so fortunate he got to see me play the role.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, who claims this one?
Okay, that's me. That's me. This is the cast of Title of Show. And this is their 10th anniversary concert that I was able to produce with the Actors Fund. I did several events with the Actors Fund that were quite celebrity studded and just delightful one night only events. And this was one of them that was near and dear to my heart. They're all fantastic, this cast.
Love that show. Love the score. Love the score.
Okay, that's me again. All right, this is from the Hollywood Bowl with Reba McEntire. Brian Stokes is not in this, but Stokes is magnificent to work with. He's one of my idols. But getting to work at the Hollywood Bowl itself is an experience of its own.
I'm sure.
Just amazing. And to work with Reba is just a dream.
What a joy she is on stage. She's
and off. On stage and off.
Yeah, that's so great.
Yeah.
Well, that was my first press clipping when I did my first show in the Yiddish Theater. And the story is, it says that 7 years old. It said 7-year-old Ricky Grossman. I was Ricky until I was like 57, I guess. So, but it said I was 7. Actually, I was 6. I had not turned 7 yet. But back then, the city of New York had a very strict law that children under the age of 7 could not appear on the stage. So my father was the producer, and Uncle Irving, they were the producers.
Right.
So they fudged it a little, and I said, "What do you mean? Are they going to come and like arrest me and take me away in a police car?" And Uncle Irving said, "If they do, tell them you're a 30-year-old midget."
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Oh, okay. This is one of the. I'm not sure. No. This was from Airport Playhouse, which was my home.
Wow.
From about 1978 until the early 90s. I directed over 50 shows there and was in. This is from Terrence McNally's The Ritz. And we had a great time. I was on stage there with Julian Ross and Jack Jestry, who I also got to direct. And this number was the Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy, which coincidentally, Tony, was choreographed by our very dear friend Judy Greenhut.
Oh, Judy.
And yeah, during the this was in the early 80s. So the topic of the Ritz, which takes place in a gay men's bathhouse, it was still kind of a borderline topic back there, and it was a show that either audiences loved or hated, but we had a fun time doing it.
That's great. That's great. And a big shout out to Amy and Bill McGrath, who I know are watching.
Yep.
They helped so many people get started and have gave all of us so many opportunities. It's just absolutely amazing. Okay, Tony, I think this might be you.
Yeah, it is me. Right. So on the left is Douglas Hodge in the Marilyn Monroe gown. This is all La Cage aux Folles. Of course, there's Kelsey Grammer. And then up in the right-hand corner, you see that's Harvey Firestein as Zaza, with Christopher Stieber playing George.
That's incredible.
And this was just such wonderful memories of all of these people. They're just treasures, all of them.
Just incredible. Incredible. And there's our Singing Revolution logo.
Which we've heard a little bit about.
Just so when you see it, ladies and gentlemen, when you see the sign, go running. Just go running to the show. You won't be sorry.
Yeah, or you can go to singrevolutionthemusical.com and
that's right.
About it. There you go.
That's right. Awesome. Thank you.
Shameless plug. Sure.
Well, this was, as we said, we Jeff and I go back 40 years to Seesaw, and this was our most latest collaboration. I finally, after so many years, got the opportunity to work on the stage at Theater 3, and wonderful production of the Addams Family with so many great people there that I love. And it was just one of the most wonderful casts and production staffs to work with the two Jeffs and Nicole Bianco and everybody there. And it was such a playing Uncle Fester. I didn't realize how wonderful playing that role would be. And it just gave me an opportunity and gave me the freedom that the creative staff gave me to do so many things. It was the first time I got to tap dance on a stage and I don't know, in 40 years.
That's great.
It was really a wonderful, wonderful time. And I miss all those people.
Yeah.
So
much. We had, there's Matt Sinise and Tracy Lynn Connor, Jessica Murphy, who was wonderful, Matt Venenzia, Ginger Dalton, who was absolutely hysterical. And then not pictured is Steve Isle and Linda May and Matt Peretti. Absolutely wonderful group of people. And it really was what a enjoyable show that was. Really nice.
Okay, this is mine. Yep. So this is Bombshell in Concert. And I got to associate produce this. Maybe you might have seen it. I think it was broadcast last Sunday as a benefit for the Actors Fund. And what was so magical about this, the little story behind it, is that I was doing a lot of benefits for Broadway Cares. And the Actors Fund had announced they were doing Bombshell in Concert. and their phones went off the hook worldwide. And Tim Pinkney, the producer on the event, called Tom Viola at Broadway Cares and said, I need help. This has gotten too big for the Actors Fund. It's only me. Who do I call? And Tom said, call Tony Spinosa. He's the guy who can
That's
make it happen for
great.
you. And that was my first venture with the Actors Fund. And oh my God, what a beautiful night it was. It was the night after the Tony Awards. Christian Borle had just won his first Tony Award, and he walked in for the rehearsal the next day, just a little hungover, but a joy. And he couldn't be happier to be part of this wonderful evening, and so proud of this concert. I think it's one of the best things Actors Fund has ever produced.
It was spectacular. It really, really was spectacular. I wanted so badly to be there, and so I was so excited. Very tough ticket. Yeah. But I was so excited when I heard it was going to be rebroadcast. Yeah.
Okay, this is a scene from the first national tour of Bullets Over Broadway, in which I was so fortunate to be cast and play the role of the producer Julian Marks. The process of getting this role just went so quickly, and from within 3 days, before I knew it, I walked into the callback with 30 people sitting there. I never dreamed that I would be at a callback for Susan Stroman. And, it was just like, this is a dream. This is not happening. She, of course, is the most gracious, wonderful, lovely lady to be with, to work with. It was just a wonderful experience, great people to tour with, and made some wonderful friends, and had a lot of fun doing this show.
That's great.
Yes. Okay. This was me. This was my second endeavor with the Actors Fund as a producer, and we produced Thoroughly Modern Millie in concert. I believe it was the 15th year anniversary.
Right.
And I have to tell you, this leading lady is one of the most treasured leading ladies in all of Broadway, not only because of what she does on stage, but she leads the team from backstage and forward. She is such a joy at every rehearsal, and so patient and so loving with every single person. She's just magnificent to work with. And it was, again, another magical night for the Actors Fund. I hope they broadcast this next.
Yes, I have my fingers crossed.
I hope, because it was really amazing. The original cast got back together, and the original orchestra got back together for this as well.
No kidding. Oh,
I know. They were able to assemble that, and I was just...
That doesn't happen. That just doesn't happen. That's amazing.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, this goes back to a very young Rick, and this was one of my first national tours with the play Enter Laughing. And the gentleman that I'm on stage with was one of the great stars of the Yiddish theater, and then Broadway, Menashe Skolnick. And he mentored me during that tour. He taught me about comic timing and comic discipline, and how to underplay certain things to be able to get a laugh. And every time I think back of the experience with this, it's about all the things that I learned on that tour, and it was a very meaningful time in my life.
Wow, amazing.
And here I am on the Jumbotron screen and I don't know if, Tony, if you ever played in the Starlight Theater in Kansas City.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
this is
yes.
Starlight. The Starlight Theater is an outdoor amphitheater. It seats 8,000 people.
Holy cow.
I've had the good fortune to play there 3 times now. And I was there with Dirty Dancing, the classic musical on stage, which was converted from the movie to the stage by the original author, Eleanor Bergstein, who I worked with on this. And being a part of the Dirty Dancing history and how, of course, it related to me because of my experiences in the Catskill Mountains.
Absolutely.
It all came together. And when we were in first rehearsals and doing some table work, and I brought up some things, and Eleanor was sitting there, and she said to me, "How do you know so much about the Catskill?" Because I knew who she was basing the characters that she wrote about
right
in 1987. but based on my experiences.
That's so great.
Dirty Dancing, we toured all over North America, Canada, and I never thought I would be up on a big screen like Barry Manilow or Billy Joel. So oh yeah, it's the kid from Long Island up there.
That's so funny.
So it was another great experience.
That's great.
Very fortunate to be able to have had that.
That's great.
Oh gosh, that's me again. This is a show clip from Peter Pan.
Yes.
And you'll see in the very bottom left-hand corner, that's Kathy Rigby as Peter.
Yes.
This is his home underground, and those are all the Lost Boys on the bottom. And then on top, you'll see there's Captain Hook. And I'm furthest left on top with the big feathered hat and sitting next to Captain Hook. And then there's Smee, and then there's Starkey up there.
Uh-huh.
That's from the Broadway production. That's right from the show. Yeah.
That's such a beautiful shot.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful shot. Yeah. And yeah, so that concludes Tell Me a Story. Guys, I really can't thank you enough. It's been such what I tell you, when we first, just before we went on the air, I said to the guys, the hour, like, you bat an eye and it's gone. It's unbelievable. But I can't thank you both enough for spending the time. Oh, you got the seesaw. Wow. Is that a poster?
No, that's the playbill. The cover.
Oh, the playbill. Oh my gosh.
And inside is like everybody's name.
Oh my god.
That's amazing. That's incredible.
The funniest thing about this was that, I don't know if you guys remember, if you were here, but we had a cast party here in my house that I'm still in.
I do remember that.
And it was such a wild time. And that was 1980. That's the last cast party I ever was allowed to have in this house. Never had one after that. But we had a great time.
That's good. That's good. That's good.
No, it's not where you start. It's where you finish.
Where you finish.
But we're not
exactly.
finished yet.
That's right. That's right.
Exactly.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Once again, guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Jeff. Everybody stay safe, please. Stay safe and love each other.
Healthy.
Yes.
Thank
Love
you.
each other especially. Thank you, guys.
Thank
All right,
you,
everybody. Jeff. So long. Have a good one. We'll see you in 2 weeks with another Dishin with Ditty. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, guys.